Why is audio more important than video?
Me and AJ were actually just talking about that in the car because we went to go pick up this new brick wall backdrop. And I think audio is so important because you can't unlisten. You can unwatch, like you can look away, you can close your eyes, but you can't tell your brain to stop listening to something.
There was a podcast I was listening to just the other day that the host's mic was bad and the guest's mic was good. And I had to stop listening to the podcast, even though I really liked the guest. I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. Like, it hurts my ears. It's so bad.
Yeah, and AJ and I were talking about this. It's like you can forgive somewhat of bad video, but you really cannot forgive bad audio, because when you're trying to like listen to dialogue and the music is too loud or whatever, it's you can't even get into it. Whereas at least if you can hear what's going on, or something's not bothering you, and weird noises or whatever, you can kind of forgive the bad visuals.
Well, I know that to be true because I upload a 720 version on Facebook, and I intentionally don't give it descriptions or tags or like. Facebook is just for everyone to see a video, but for the most part, I put the most optimized version in every way on YouTube, because that's where I want people to watch it, because YouTube is also where I get paid. And there's version, that the people on there's avid like Facebook watchers, and in my head I'm like, do you want like a better version? Like, go to YouTube. But some people are like, nah, I'm good on here. Like, yeah. I'll just like I'll keep watching it here.
But yeah, I think the thing is audio is one of those things where you don't notice good audio, but you really notice bad audio. Mm-hmm. And same thing with video. It's like you probably notice bad video, but not nearly as much as bad audio. And some people don't really necessarily like technically know the difference between good video and bad video. Like, they might look at a video that's 720p and 4K and like be like, they look the same to me. But someone like me that's been looking at the differences, like, I can tell. The
subtleties matter. The little bits matter.
Yeah, and also a lot of times people are like, why are you shooting 4K? It's not necessary. It's mainly for post. It's mainly so I can do things later that I couldn't do in 1080. And I even had that mentality from the beginning.
If you guys want to see a sick video, the hands-on concepts video that when we went and got fitted for the chair, all the B-roll, he wasn't actually like slowly panning the camera. That was done in post.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can get like kind of a wider shot, and then later almost like fake the movement of the camera. So you can do like a slow zoom in or like a zoom out or a pan to the right or left in the edit, which is it just makes it that much more like cinematic. Cause whenever you have like smooth movements, that's what everyone like talks about. That's why everyone's like so crazy about gimbals and stuff these days. But honestly, sometimes gimbals just like make it like almost unnatural. AJ, what are you thinking?
So my opinion with gimbals is that it's only for stylistic things.
Yeah.
So there is,
it's like only if you are writing in calligraphy do you need a calligraphy pen kind of thing.
It's not the right tool for every job.
Yeah.
So like, for example, my friend Brendan, he shoots music videos, and he did, I think his buddy, he was a cinematographer. He did this really cool shot on a bridge where the camera was like spinning as if in post.
With the Ronin S?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was the Ronin S.
Because that one can spin in 360.
So, for those of y'all that don't know, the Ronin S, it's like a stick gimbal. So you can program it to spin. And in post-production with 4K, you can't really spin unless you were to like zoom in as much to like, a ton.
Because you'd get the black bars on the top and bottom as it spun. Like, you'd see the edges of the video. And you could do some weird like repeating pixels on the edges, but it's not going to look nearly the same as if you really spun the camera in 360. Right. So if you're to achieve certain looks, you need a gimbal.
Yes, exactly. But in another case, I would recommend just buying a
Steadicam.
They're like called glide cams.
Yeah.
So it's just like setting a camera on a stick with weights at the bottom of it. And if you want to get
one of the things I have.
I have a smooth shot, just get that. Yeah. You don't really want to cheap out on it. I would recommend getting that more. But going back to the gimbal, it's also better for using like, let's say like a parkour video. You just
chase someone. Yeah,
you need that stabilization.
Yeah, or if you're like, if there's any kind of like fast movements, like if you're skateboarding,
bicycling, cars,
exactly.
Totally action sports kind of stuff. Yes. But if you're just doing like out and about kind of like slow movement stuff, it's the gimbal sometimes gives it this weird like warpy kind of stabilization that looks unreal. And the other thing is sometimes natural camera movement is fine. Like I don't
like my friend Lucas is a big fan of just holding it handheld because it gives you that sort of realistic. Or not really realistic.
Because when I'm looking at Richard,
I would say human movement.
Exactly.
There's some human movement, and it's like if I were, especially POV shots.
Exactly.
Like if you're a POV shot and you don't have some human movements in it, it's like, am I even POV?
You're like I'm not a tripod.
Yeah.
Like for an action fight scene, maybe like you'd want that shakiness because it gives you that like tension of like. Oh man, I'm fighting someone, or you're like kind of with the character in that scene.
And that's why a lot of scary movies use like tons of camera movement, like it's jittery.
I mean, the OG was like Blair Witch Project.
Exactly. Like found footage stuff, because that's not safe. It's supposed to look like found footage and stuff. So it's like if you eliminate, and one thing, just again, we're ranting about camera stuff, but whatever, that's what we're into.
I mean, this episode is basically camera stuff now, so who cares?
Which is good. Who cares?
Yeah.
So one thing that's a good tip is like a lot of times people are like hand holding. One tip that my friend Jake taught me a long time ago is instead of trying to like hold the camera as steady as possible, you actually like, if you kind of like slowly kind of sway the camera or like slightly like kind of move from side to side, just barely.
I've noticed you do that like especially when you're using the shorter lens and you're like in my face, you'll have these.
I almost kind of like rock back
you like
and forth.
left to right and in and out and back and forth, and instead of it looks on purpose. Instead of like if you were holding it and it was just
you're
like
gonna start to jitter,
wiggle and jitter and shake, because no human can hold something perfectly still. But if you intentionally kind of
have a little bit of smooth natural movement,
like ocean almost, like a little bit of like wave to it.
Exactly.
It's chill, and it's like the only way you can really tell is if you like look at the top left or the top right of the screen, and you like put like focus on like a tree in the background.
You'll see it goes away,
and the tree like comes in
back.
and out of focus. And I was like, oh, because I was wondering, I was like, why is he always like wagging this camera in my face? Because sometimes it would just, I'm like, is he shooting a music video? Like, what's going on here? Like, what's that? Yeah, exactly.
Right. We joke on that a lot.
Yeah.
But one other thing too, just to end off the whole gimbal argument, not argument, but
discussion.
Yeah, we'll say that. It's very, very good for getting like car videos.
Totally.
So if you were to, you see those big cars with those cranes, that's what they're called, those cranes that have at the end of them, they have the red cameras, the really expensive ones, and they have the gimbals for those red cameras.
Stabilizing it.
Yep. And that's really
you kind of have to have one of those,
Anything else is kind of pointless.
Exactly. Yeah, I see so many. I remember when at Vid Summit, every freaking guy had a gimbal. It's just like
for like vlogging or something.
Yeah, and it's like the thing about gimbals is it's just like the freaking monoshock on the wheelchair. You don't freaking need it. It's just a flex on like, look at how big my setup is, and whoa, I'm vlogging with this giant thing. I must be important or something. It's like, no, your arm is gonna hurt.
So
no, you're gonna have to charge extra batteries and worry about your gimbal dying throughout the day. No,
a very weird parallel that'll kind of make sense. So there was a time I used to play semi-professional tournament paintball, and it was always the teams that had like the most recent, the most newest, and the most decked out equipment. We knew we were just gonna run over them.
Totally.
Like we saw someone with like a new pack with like a bunch of pods and like the brand new gun that came out like 3 months earlier, and like the hoppers and like all this like tech, and like they had like a full staging area with like a tent, and like I'm like my staging area is like the trunk of my car. My gun is like 4 different colors of parts that I had pulled together because like they had broken halfway through the tournament, and I had to steal parts from other people's guns. Like, like I had this like raggedy jersey and like ripped pants, and I'm like, I always look at my friends.
And you run train on them.
I'd be like, dude, we're just going to destroy these people.
These fucking nerds.
Like, we're going to straight crush these kids. And even when there was like a team that would show up, and then like, so there was like feeder teams, just like in other pro sports, like the pro team, there's a semi-pro team, and then there's like the feeder team. So sometimes the semi-pro team would like let the feeder team like use their gear, and it was like, oh, they got new guns today. They don't even know how to use them. Like, yes, like
that's
like they may be better. It's like, oh, we were worried about that.
On paper,
like we were worried about that team, but now we're not worried anymore because they don't even know how to work their stuff. Like we know, because like, just like all the subtleties and the mechanics of cameras that we've just talked about, the paintball markers, the guns would have their own like personalities.
Totally.
Like egos start a certain way, and shockers start a certain way, and cockers did another way, and angels shot another way, and like the DM series, like they all like had different characteristics, and the goal was to be able to hit your opponent. So if you didn't know the personality of the gun, then you didn't know how to
shoot it. Yeah, literally. You're like figuring it out as you're playing. Yeah. No, I remember that with like tennis. I played tons of tennis growing up all the way through high school, and tennis is one of those things where it's kind of like a country club sport where people do kind of dork out on like the clothes of it and like the nicest rackets and what strings are you using and blah 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 blah.
Shoes and whatever.
Yeah, but the shoes, man, that's a big one. But I remember this one kid from this kind of poor school, and most of the time the schools that were like in the more like ghetto areas, they sucked at tennis because, like, let's face it, like those types of kids aren't really playing very much tennis versus
football, basketball.
The rich kids, whatever, they live in a neighborhood with nice tennis courts, and they probably have a pro that works out of there, and so they have like private lessons all the time. Like they're just good at it. And I remember this one kid, he would rock Costco tennis shoes, so we'd always like kind of clown on him a little bit. And he's from a different school,
but he was good.
He's rocking like the Court Classics. They're like $20, and they're always like kind of torn up. And he was rocking like not a Walmart racket, but like almost a Walmart racket. Like not a good, it was probably like $50, $60, whereas like a normal good racket would be at least like 120, 130, 50. Like you're spending a decent bit. And he would crush. He was really good.
Just wipe people clean.
He was really, really good. And
Dr. Phil has a funny story about that. How they went and played like a poor school that couldn't even afford uniforms. They had to take like painter's tape and like tape on the numbers onto their shirt. And they got like their asses handed to them. They got cleaned off the field. And afterwards, everyone was like, "What happened?" Like they were wearing like regular shirts, and it's like, yeah, because that is his only shirt. That is not just a shirt. That is his shirt. Like these boys are hungry. Like they're coming for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was funny because one time our best player on our team, he went and warmed up. We were playing this team that was really bad. It was kind of mean, but he went out on the court with a kid's SpongeBob tennis racket.
Oh, just a stunt
to warm up. So the whole warm up, he was using a SpongeBob racket.
Just a clown. Oh my god.
And then when the match started, he pretended like his mom brought him his racket. Like, oh my gosh, thanks, Mom. Oh my gosh, I was going to have to use this SpongeBob racket. But like everyone on our team was like, oh my God, that was so funny. It was so immature, but like we were clowning on the other team pretty hard. But that was pretty fun.
Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want the full episode, you can click right here. If you want to subscribe, click here. If you want more clips, we got 2 more right over here.